I am so excited because today I have Lara Bruhn, who is on the Ignite Visibility podcast. Lara really has a tremendous background and is highly educated. Lara is currently the co-owner of Mr. Electirc of San Antonio and Mr. Electirc of Austin, where she's been running the businesses for nearly 5 years. But she didn't start there. Lara has been an instructor of marketing, a managing director, a general manager, a program associate, an analyst, and she also has an MBA from Harvard and a bachelor's degree from Princeton. In this interview, you're going to hear about her journey, how she thinks about marketing, what has allowed for her to be successful in franchising, and how she even decided to get into franchising in the first place. There's a moment in the interview where she gives some really interesting technological insight into what's working and also how she set up her back-end infrastructure. When thinking about both of her locations, she talks about what's consolidated as far as her infrastructure and what's something that's unique to each of the individual locations. If you are at all interested in marketing, franchising, franchise marketing, and being successful, this is definitely the interview for you. Let's go dive into it. Let's hear a little bit about Lara, how she got started, and where she is today, and all the things along the way. All right, Lara, thank you so much for joining Ignite Visibility University podcast. We are so excited to have you here today. I saw that you started off going to Princeton and Harvard, and you got your MBA at Harvard. What was that experience like, and how did that education kind of set you up for where you are now?
Well, one of my 7 essays to Harvard was, you should admit me because I have more to learn than anyone else. I know nothing and I really need to learn a lot. And they must have bought that argument. It was very challenging for me because I was a psychology major in undergraduate. I had no formal business training. I had dabbled in business-like things, but never taken an accounting class, never taken a marketing class. So I was really starting from square one, and it seemed to me like everyone else was on square 39 already. But in some ways, what a great life lesson, because it's all about failing forward, right? I mean, you just stay in your lane, do what you can do, work hard, and eventually you'll get where you need to go. And that was very much the case.
That's really amazing that you were able to go to Harvard and get your MBA and do that without a lot of business experience. I also got my MBA, and I felt pretty much the same way. To be honest, I do feel though that it helped me quite a bit. Do you think it was helpful to you, and would you encourage other people to get that second level of education?
I would. One of the things about going to a liberal arts undergraduate institution is they really do encourage lifelong learning. So if you asked me if it was worth learning anything, I would probably say yes. But business in particular, there's a whole language there. I think we as marketers, we use words a lot, we use pictures, we use sound. A lot of business people, they use numbers, they use charts, they use graphs. It's still telling a story. It's all about storytelling. And so there's a part of learning that language and learning to read that language and express yourself in that language that's important. And then there's just some hacks, right? Some really quick 4 square diagrams or patterns that you recognize that come to you that much faster when you've had the education and you don't waste 9 months figuring out first principles from scratch.
I would agree with that. And just having kind of some of those fundamentals, accounting, finance, and understanding the mechanics can be really helpful. One of the things that I noticed is before you actually got into franchising, did you teach marketing for a while? And what was that kind of career progression like before you got to where you are today?
Yep. I describe myself as a refugee from corporate America. I spent my time in corporate America, loved it, enjoyed it. And at the same time, my husband and I decided that we wanted to have children, and I was on a plane all the time, and that just wasn't going to work with a family. And so I pivoted to teaching marketing at the undergraduate level. And it was a really great experience because it made me go back and think about everything I knew from the perspective of someone who knew nothing. And how could I bring that relevant experience into the classroom? Because a lot of professors, they don't actually have the real life experience. And the thing that I could add to the classroom was not just what we learned in the textbook, but how that worked in real life. And so it was just a whole wonderful mental exercise of seeing what I had done through the prism of someone who had never done it before and was reading a book with first principles. And so it was challenging, but also a lot of fun.
I could see you wanting to move fast and working with you for a short time. We know that that's the pace you like to go at, which I absolutely love because I like to go quickly too. How did you find your way into franchising? Talk to us a little bit about that and the evolution with San Antonio and Austin locations.
Yeah. So my husband and I were actually looking for a business to buy. We had previously owned a business, had successfully grown it and sold it. That was in the Pittsburgh area, and had moved to Texas and wanted to own a business here in Texas, and came across the owner of the Mr. Electric, who owned the Mr. Electric of San Antonio. And when he said it was a franchise, I went home and I said to my husband, I hesitate to even bring this up because we said we'd never do a franchise, but and then I started talking about all the reasons why this actually did check all the boxes of the business that we were looking to buy. And we really did invest quite a bit of time in getting comfortable with the franchisor. Most importantly, some wonderful, wonderful other owners. And I think that's one of the best things about franchising is that you're instantly part of a group of other folks, all of whom succeed and learn from each other.
Yeah, I love that story. And congratulations on having those two amazing businesses and working with franchising for a very long time. I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions about it and a lot of value that's out there that a lot of people don't realize. Do you feel the same way on any level?
I do. I mean, all the statistics show that franchises have a much higher probability of succeeding than non franchises. The fact that the systems have been tried by multiple folks under as close to scientific experiment parameters as you can find is helpful. The fact that the franchisor has a vested interest in your success. And again, to instantly be part of a network of folks who are doing more or less the same thing you're doing, but in a non competitive way, right? They benefit if you try and experiment and share the results with them. If one of us finds a great vendor and passes that along, if somebody's got an idea, I've probably got 3 emails today with ideas that people are either asking me about or I'm getting feedback on. That to me is just so very valuable.
I love that. I love the sense of community, and one of the things that's inspiring to me, and watching you and some of the other amazing franchisees out there is that since you've taken over this business, you've been able to grow it. You've been able to have a lot of success. What are some of the things you did right when you stepped in the door, and how did that evolve in order to allow you to grow the business to where it is today?
Yeah, that first day, the very first thing we did was take each employee aside as soon as we could, try to get through them all in one day, have a personal conversation, reassure them. And I think that's really the key is to for them to get to know you as people as soon as possible and have that open dialogue so they can come to you with their fears, because that's the only way you're going to be able to allay them.
I love that you came in, had open communication, let them know that you cared about the business, and frankly, you cared about them too. One of the things that I saw on your LinkedIn is you love growing teams and growing people, and I feel like that's a big part of having a successful business is caring about the team. And how do you feel about that?
Oh, it's one of the things that really motivates me. And maybe that's related to that whole why I was a psychology major. I do really find people fascinating. I find their lives interesting. I find how they learn interesting. And I am personally motivated by helping people fulfill their potential. I think that there is so much human potential out there that goes unfulfilled. And anything I can do to help folks do that, I find selfishly just comes back to help me fulfill my potential, right? So it is a rising tide raises all ships scenario, and I guess I'm fortunate that I enjoy it, right? I take real pleasure in doing it.
It's a great leadership trait that not everybody has, and I'm sure that your team really, really appreciates that. One of the questions I want to ask you is, you've got a couple locations, and how do you manage that? Is there any tips that you have? Do you look at the businesses as the same and have the same playbook? Is it different in different markets? I'm interested about those subtleties.
Yeah, we ask ourselves that all the time. We originally started off thinking they were going to be more separate than they ended up being, which is kind of the opposite direction than I think we thought we were going. But we actually have the office support team for the entire company. So you're talking a region of about 5 million people and probably 130 miles, right? All of it sits together in person in San Antonio, with the exception of one remote employee. And those folks are the back office. They answer all the calls. They do all the permit work. They talk to the electricians all day, and that actually worked out better because that team needs to support itself. One of our core values is we fly in formation. That comes from my husband, who was a fighter pilot along in a former life, and in order to fly in formation, it's a lot easier for them if they are together. They're on the phone a lot, so we've really used Microsoft Teams extensively so that folks can consult with each other electronically. The whole group can see conversations that are going on while they're still on the phone with the customer. And then that did help most recently when we brought in the one remote member of the team, and that you can see all day, not just about work, but socially, she's a part of the group because that Teams chat, I mean, it's just lit up all day. And it's interesting to me that that's turned out to be the piece of technology that was the most helpful to creating that cohesion. And then as far as the marketing goes, that's interesting in that we have a core group of messages that are consistent for both markets, but we perceive consumer behavior to be somewhat different. And so it's about which channels, which marketing channels to use. There are some areas of San Antonio where folks still open and read their mail religiously. And then also just what their expectations are as far as what you get when you get to the home and the availability of the customer. Customers in Austin will frequently be shocked that you even want to talk to them. They don't want to talk to you. Right? If it were up to them, they wouldn't even see your face. You'd just fix it and they'd never know you were there. The folks in San Antonio are still much more relationship based. They want to talk to you. They want to get to know you. It's important before you touch anything in their home that they know who you are and what your background is. And so that I find super interesting.
I think that is so insightful. And I've been obviously to both of those locations, and just in being there, understand the subtleties of the market on some level. And I think maybe you just helped us with a major marketing insight when you're in more of a rural area opposed to a major city. The city people are going to be quicker, they want to get it done, generally, right? And in the more rural area, in some cases they're going to want to have more of a relationship, and they have different types of marketing mediums. So that's kind of what you're seeing as well, correct?
It is. It is. And of course, Texas is a place with a huge influx of population. So in my mind, I'm even segmenting between what we call the natives. And honestly, to be native just means you've been here more than 10 years, right? And the folks who are recent arrivals. If you're recent and you don't know anyone, then you're basing your entire decision probably off what you see on the internet and some reviews. If you have been here any length of time, you really pride yourself on knowing your neighbors and having a network. And so you're much more likely to ask for a referral.
One of the things you also mentioned was you're starting to be able to integrate some back end systems in order to create more efficiency. And I absolutely love that. And when I think about that, I think, well, that gives your business in some ways, a competitive advantage. And I wonder if it makes you think, would you ever want to open another location someday and use that same infrastructure? Or are you just so happy with the current size of the business and the challenges associated with that you're not that ambitious for the next phase? I'm curious.
Oh, I'd say that one's like a roller coaster. So some months my husband and I say, "Oh, we need to go buy something else. We're itching, right? We've got itchy fingers. We need to buy something else." And then of course, just like any business, any large business, we could go and open more Mr. Electrics geographically, or we could open a sister concept to electrical in the same geography. And then pretty soon after that, usually right when we've come back from a nice vacation, we look at each other and we say, "What are you, crazy? Why,
Yeah.
why would we want? We want. We didn't go on vacation for the first 2 years that we owned,
Yeah.
Mr. Electric. Why would we want to go through that again?" I think in some ways maybe it's a little like children, right? Oh, should we have enough? No, wait, are we crazy? Yeah.
That makes sense. And in the first 2 years, when I've been running Ignite Visibility for 11 years now, but the first 2 years were very, very hard. Just because we were nothing, just starting from scratch. And I do feel like, although business is always tough and it's always a little bit of whatever comes up, it has gotten a little bit easier as the business has gotten more mature. You get your systems in place, you know your customer a little bit better. Do you feel like it's gotten a bit easier for you over time that you've learned the
I think
operation?
it gets easier. Maybe the business itself doesn't actually get easier, but your self knowledge grows and your ability to manage yourself in any given scenario, I think, gets better, right? So, my ability to not let something phase me that would have phased me in year one or year two. I've
Yeah.
either seen that movie before, or as I said to someone in our office yesterday, what are you worried about? The worst has already happened. And I reminded them of something from 4 years ago. I said, it'll never be as bad as that again. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think maybe the most valuable thing that comes with the time is the ability to manage oneself, which then makes you a better leader. And of course leads to better outcomes.
Yeah, I've definitely grown my emotional intelligence on some level just by going through it, and but I do love it. And I think back, if I were to talk to maybe my younger self or somebody else who's in my position and they're looking to grow a business, what tips would I give them? But I'd be interested to actually ask you the same question. If you were coaching up a new Mr. Electric and they're just getting started, maybe they're in year one or year two, what things are kind of some top tips you go to?
Yeah. First, I when I talk to people who are thinking of buying a franchise or Mr. Electric or even a business, I really ask them about what type of a person they are, right? So someone who has spent 30 years in a very structured environment where it was very clear, if you do X, Y will happen. That's really not what it's like to own a business, right? My personality profile is very much calculated risk taker. I'm not a risk taker and that I don't love jumping out of planes for the sake of jumping out of planes, but I love looking at an opportunity and then I am willing to take more of a gamble than someone else might be. So first of all, ask yourself whether you're okay with that and then cut yourself some slack, right? Most business owners I know, we want everything to be perfect yesterday. You very kindly alluded to my desire for doing everything fast, right? You have to just be patient. You have to make sure you have enough funding that if things don't go according to plan, you've got a bit of a cushion. I'm always interested in sensitivity analysis, right? So, okay, this is your projections, but what happens if revenue's down 20%? You think you're going to have 3 vans at the end of year one. What if it's only two, right? Just ask yourselves that those questions so that you have that buffer, because the best thing you can do to help yourself is beef up your alternative scenario, right? And so that's generally some of the questions or things I like to point out to folks, because that desire to be successful out of the gate can sometimes get in the way of making the decisions you need to make to be successful in the long term.
That makes sense. Yeah, and just the mechanics of the business, making sure you got enough cash if you have a bad month sometime. One of the things that might be one of your superpowers, though, is, you do have an MBA from Harvard. You did go to Princeton. You did teach marketing. One of the things that has helped our own company is being marketing focused. Are you a marketing focused company? Do you spend a lot of time on sales and marketing in your own role in the business? And has that helped you?
Oh, yes. I mean, my primary focus is marketing. And interestingly, my secondary focus is I'm also in charge of finance, which is a really weird combination, right? But I was the psychology major who liked math. So I've been weird from the get go. But I think those two things actually, when you have a smaller business, it's even more important, right? Because I am constantly thinking both from the marketer point of view, but also from the finance point of view. Okay, what's our next move here? We're in a service business. It's really hard. You can't touch it, you can't smell it, you can't see it. You rely mostly on the marketing to convey what it is. And so then how does that translate into the types of jobs that we do? How does that translate into what we can charge for that? How does that translate into the value people come away feeling they've received? How does that then circle back into the reviews, which then feeds back into the marketing, right? It is, at this size business, all very intimately related.
It seems like a very kind of cyclical process that you just described, which is one that I totally understand. Happy customers feeds back into the business, feeds back into the marketing, and I love that. But it also seems like maybe you have some type of passion for the franchise that you selected, the business that you purchased. One of the things I saw you mention is that you like to help people be safer, and when I read that, I thought, well, that's actually a really big part of what you do. Not only just helping people's things work and have the heating stay on, and but also people being safer. What does that mean to you in the context of this business?
Well, I've always been attracted to businesses that have some benefit to the community. And to me, it was super obvious with electrical work, safety is just inevitably a part of electrical work. I mean, I wouldn't touch electrical work in my home because I'd be worried I might kill myself. And I joke, I say that with a laugh, but it's a very real possibility. So I think there's the aspect of safety that, look, let us do the things that our folks are trained to do so that you don't do something unsafe that could hurt yourself or your family. But then there's also things about your house that you want to keep safe, and homes are these really interesting things. We live in them. We spend an inordinate amount of time in them. And yet, how well do any of us really know our homes? Most people don't have electricians in their house, but every, 5 to 10 years, you don't see the wires. You don't even notice it unless it isn't working for you. And then the risk becomes, okay, something that isn't working and that you don't know it's working, is that going to cause an unsafe condition? We get calls all the time. My lights are flickering. I smell burning. I have a weird singe mark around an outlet. There's a fishy smell. I hear a funny noise, crackling. All of those are indicative of something really dangerous. And it makes me happy to know that every day we're going out to someone's home, and at one extreme we're saving them from something really bad happening, but at a minimum we're educating them about their home and how their electrical system works, because let's face it, most of us don't have any idea, and that for the rest of their lives presumably will keep them safer.
One of my best friends growing up, still a good friend today, is an electrician, and I have so much respect for what you do, and just seeing him do work sometimes. You really need an expert to do this stuff. You cannot cut corners.
No, it takes as long in the state of Texas, the number of hours you have to be a journeyman electrician, as long to be here as an apprentice to become a journeyman as it took me to get through college, right?
Wow.
That's the significant investment that these folks are making. And then when they're done, just like someone coming out of college is just out of college, there's still years of development. And it's one neat thing about Mr. Electric in just doing electrical work. It's all we do, is that's all we sit around and talk about all day long. And we learn from each other. Every week we get together in this big meeting. Everybody's showing each other pictures of burnt panels and weird stuff they saw, and learning from each other about how you would fix this or what possibly could have caused this. And so it is fun to hang out with a group of people who just nerd out on electrical stuff, because there is always something new to learn there.
So, what do you love the most about Mr. Electric? Is it that the community?
Yeah, I love our team. I mean, I really do. Owning a business of this size, it's like a family. And look, sometimes people break your heart, right? We'll have folks for their spouse got a great job opportunity in California and they moved, and it makes us sad.
So, last question for you. What are you kind of focused on going into the next year? And any kind of final thoughts about running a successful franchise, and then where can people find out more about you?
Yeah. I think our challenge for next year will be a carryover from this year, which is I personally want us to have more market share. If we are going to dedicate ourselves to this market, which we will, whether or not we expand, then I want us to have more market share. If nothing else, then it's just a sign, it's a validation that we're doing things right, right? Back to your point about the circular nature, the more market share we have, the greater personal validation I'll feel that we must be doing something right because
Be
so
the
many
go-to
people.
person in the market. I love that.
Exactly. So
Hmm.
I'm sort of fixated on growing market share. And then, of course, there's a bunch of different ways we can do that. There's investment going on. That's another thing. You think when you start, okay, I'm going to invest. And well, guess what? You keep investing, right? And what business, if you see a business owner who stopped investing, they're retired on the job and they probably really should sell it, right? And so it's then just a question of prioritizing where we want to invest our marketing dollars next year in our pursuit of market share. And then training is another one. We've really come a long way in our training, but there's further that we could get. And so I think we want to try and document and codify some of our training, because as we do grow and get bigger and create more opportunities for our employees to grow with us, which is another reason owners want to grow, right? You've got people who work for you. You want them to be able to get promoted, to have more opportunity. We need to do a better job documenting those things that we do well, because Matt and I aren't going to be around to do them forever if we get bigger.
Yeah. Awesome. Those sound like really great priorities. And if anybody needs support on the electrical side, or they'd love to just follow you online, where can they check you out?
Yeah, I'd suggest going to MrElectricCentralTX.com. So that's Mr. Electric Central and the letters TX.com. And I just say, feel free, follow us, reach out, and hopefully you don't need us in an emergency. But if you do, we're there.
Awesome, Laura. We learned so much today. It was a joy to have you on. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, John.